Now, last month, Politico published an excerpt from Hacks, former interim Democratic National Committee Chair Donna Brazile's book about the 2016 election. Now, in this book, Brazile revealed that an agreement between the DNC and Hillary Clinton's campaign gave Hillary Clinton unprecedented control of the party apparatus long before she was the nominee. This was as early as August 2015. So the DNC's own rules and bylaws that said that, hey, look, we don't normally let somebody take control of the entire party apparatus until they become the nominee. This was way before she was a nominee, and of course, upon learning this, a lot of people were justifiably angry at Hillary Clinton, angry at the DNC for obviously being incredibly biased against Bernie Sanders or anybody else running. So now this agreement is proof of the primary being rigged in favor of Hillary Clinton, right? Now, Brazile originally said that it was rigged, but then she walked it back by saying that this was the cancer. She had found the cancer inside of the Democratic Party, and it was these kinds of agreements. Now, if you want to define rigged as, hey, look, they stole votes and they changed vote tallies, which I think a lot of corporate Democrats are actually saying, and a lot of Democratic defenders are saying, then I would agree with Brazile. However, if you mean rigged as in they did all sorts of shady things to stack the deck against Bernie Sanders, which include disenfranchising people so they can't vote in the first place. You don't have to change vote totals if you just stop people from voting. Or, and they do that, of course, by, first of all, deregistering people who registered as Democrats. These are people that have been Democrats for 20, 30 years, suddenly found their registrations changed at certain polling places, so they couldn't vote in a Democratic primary. And then you have other places with rules, like, for example, New York, that has insane rules about when you have to register to vote into the election. In the case of New York, you had to be registered a year in advance if you wanted to be a part of the primary. It was long before Bernie Sanders had even been, interested in running for office. So that, to me, that is clear evidence of rigging. So if you're going to go with that definition, then absolutely it was rigged. If you want to go with another definition, then, well, that's your prerogative, right? So anyway, what didn't get mentioned here in this book, as so much, I think it was more of an afterthought, is actually who's been running the DNC. Now, it's certainly not the people. It actually wasn't even Hillary Clinton per se, even though she had a lot of say. But it turns out that the people that were really calling the shots are the paid consultants. And of course, a lot of these paid consultants were Hillary Clinton supporters, Hillary Clinton backers, and these are people that wanted Hillary Clinton to win. So I guess in essence, if you wanted to say that they were in control of the party, then you would be correct. But this is a big, big problem. This goes far beyond just one campaign, because with Hillary gone, those same kind of paid consultants are still actually there. And that's a problem. Now, even before the agreement with Hillary Clinton and the DNC, Debbie Wasserman Schultz had turned over control of the DNC, because apparently she was too lazy to run it herself, to its new de facto leaders, paid consultant groups. According to an article in the Huffington Post, written by Mike Sonato, Walker Bragman, and Jeff Campbell, the DNC relied on multiple consulting firms during this election, but the two most prominent and highest paid were Precision Strategies and SKDKnickerbocker. Why you would ever want to run with that name, I have no idea. But there you go. On January 26, 2015, about 3 months before Clinton officially announced her candidacy, Precision received its first payment from the DNC for the 2016 election cycle. On May 19th of 2015, SKDK, which had worked with the party in various roles for years, also received its first payment of the cycle. The DNC ultimately gave Precision and SKDK close to $1 million over the course of the presidential race. Nearly $400,000 of that came during the primary when Clinton was fighting with Senator Bernie Sanders. So they were paying these consultant groups during this primary, and these consultant groups had a lot of power inside the DNC to shape messaging. Now, I'm going to give some dollar figures, some more dollar figures, I should say. The DNC paid Precision $230,000 for political consulting between February 2016 and the end of the primary, and it paid SKDK $150,000 for media consulting between May 2015 and the end of the primary. In October 2015, and here's where you get this conflict of interest, former top Clinton aide Mark Penn had purchased SKDK. So from the time that this consulting group was contracted, was being paid by the DNC, it was also being owned by a top Clinton aide. I wonder whose side they were on. Now, these consulting firms, as I said, had an important role inside the DNC. They were coordinating strategic communications, media relations, and research. And they were doing so well before the party chose its nominee. Now, these groups included several established Democratic operatives who openly favored Hillary Clinton. Many of them had actually had a history with the Clintons. So not only did the party establishment make a deal with Clinton that massively favored her, that Bernie Sanders did not have access to, and to be honest, wouldn't have taken, but the consultant firms running the DNC strategy were filled with Clinton supporters. Now let me give you some names. Precision co-founder Jennifer O'Malley Dillon, a Barack Obama campaign veteran and former executive director of the DNC, was considered a likely Clinton campaign hire even before she was brought on to help with the party's 2016 messaging. The New York Times reported back in August 2015 that O'Malley Dillon was unofficially advising the Hillary Clinton campaign. Now, they even had ties back before that. There were internal emails dating back to 2014 that read, Debbie Wasserman Schultz and DNC CEO Amy Dacey are supportive of bringing someone in to fill a general election planning preparation role. This is Robbie Mook writing to Hillary Clinton. We agreed that Jen O'Malley Dillon would be a very strong candidate. She has the experience, relationships, gravitas to navigate the building. It is also completely credible for the White House to say that she's their pick. We agreed that she should be our first choice for now, unless we think of someone better. So here's the eventual Clinton campaign chair talking with Hillary Clinton, plus the leaders of the DNC, saying, let's bring in this consultant to the DNC who is with us. If she's with us, she's with Hillary Clinton. We're going to bring her in, and we're going to have her firm do messaging for the DNC. The two SKDK managing directors who worked most closely with the DNC were Anita Dunn, a former White House aide under President Obama, and Hillary Rosen, a longtime recording industry lobbyist, occasional Capitol staffer, and 2008 Clinton backer. The Clinton campaign listed both Dunn and Rosen as reliable surrogates in a memo written by Communications Director Jennifer Palmieri, which was circulated in a March 8, 2015 email chain. So now you're going to see how reliable they were as Clinton surrogates as I get further into the story. But again, here's the DNC clearly stacking people in favor of a Hillary run even before Hillary was a candidate. John Reinisch, SKDK Senior Vice President, also helped behind the scenes, acting as an envoy for Wasserman Schultz, whom he has described as a personal friend and coordinating media strategy with their staff. Reinisch had served in the host committee for a Ready for Hillary LGBT fundraiser in New York City back in January of 2015. O'Malley, Dillon, Dunn, Rosen, and Reinisch, unsurprisingly, took sides during the primary, and none of them even took Bernie Sanders' side. None of them took Bernie Sanders' side, that's much as obvious. O'Malley Dillon endorsed Clinton on Twitter 4 days before the Iowa caucuses, sharing an article that portrayed Sanders supporters as online bullies. Here we go. Dunn had helped set the Democratic primary debate schedule, a schedule that, of course, benefited the Hillary Clinton campaign massively. Rosen and Reinisch repeatedly attacked Sanders in the media and online. This is them being surrogates. On October 2015, Rosen wrote an op-ed for the Washington Post attacking Bernie Sanders on gay rights. Wait, you're going to attack Bernie Sanders, the most liberal senator in America, and somebody who's been in favor of gay rights long before Hillary Clinton, on gay rights. Seriously, this is what they're doing. Oh, that's Bernie Sanders. He's not even liberal on gay rights. He's terrible on gay rights. He's terrible to women. Wait, again, this is somebody who, back in the 80s, had actually endorsed gay rights, who's been fighting for gay rights, and probably longer. It's smear tactics, right? And these people, of course, were dictating DNC strategy. There's more. In January 2016, she gave an interview with the Post in which she criticized Bernie Sanders' record on women's rights. Again, the most progressive senator in history, and somebody who has voted to help women, who has policies that are actually very, very pro-woman. And in April, she characterized his supporters as sexist bullies on CNN. After Sanders endorsed Wasserman Schultz's primary opponent, Rosen called the senator, quote, a petty jerk in an email with DNC communications director Luis Miranda. Reinisch wrote multiple articles in the New York Observer criticizing Sanders and spreading the narrative that his supporters were, of course, online bullies that were misogynistic. So there they go. They spread the narrative that people are Bernie bros and they're sexist. So, and look, that was a clear narrative that was echoed throughout the primary against Bernie Sanders. How dare he run against a woman? That means that he's a misogynist, that he is against women. That is clearly and completely not true. It is a bullshit smear campaign. But the fact that these people had so much power inside the DNC and clearly were not neutral is sort of the main complaint that people have against the DNC and the Democratic Party, that these people fail to be neutral, as they're supposed to be. They are supposed to be impartial towards candidates. Now, what was not impartial as well is the very thing that these consultant groups were put in to do, and that is the messaging for the Democratic Party. Now, if you look at the DNC's messaging on that time, well, you would notice a lack of any of the issues that Bernie Sanders had ran on. Now, Bernie Sanders wasn't popular because, you know, of exactly of who he is. I mean, his character and his the idea that he is consistent and that he has stood by and that he has fought on these issues for decades is one of the reasons that people flock to him. But another reason, and I think the main reason, is because of those issues. Just the fact that he's one of the only people that were out there speaking on the issue of income inequality, breaking up the banks, helping the working class, fighting on behalf of unions, making sure that people have fair wages and health care. He's somebody that actually goes out and talks about that. Now, that differed massively with the DNC messaging. They didn't talk about any of that stuff. Instead, what was the DNC message focused on? It was focused on personal attacks against Donald Trump. Well, we see how well that worked out. There was no mention of income inequality, which, again, look, most of the, if not all of the issues Bernie Sanders ran impact women. Healthcare impacts women. Income inequality impacts women. And I think wealth and income inequality actually impacts women far more than it does men. And that was one of Bernie Sanders' main points. He was fighting against the massive amounts of wealth inequality between the rich and the poor. And yet, the DNC's talking points throughout the race didn't talk about those issues. They didn't make a case for the working class. They didn't make a case, ironically, for women. They simply did character attacks on Trump. And look, again, we see what happened, right? It's easy to attack Trump on character because he's a shit person. Donald Trump is a terrible person, and anybody with 2 eyeballs can see that, okay? But what voters wanted to know is, okay, look, I know Donald Trump's a shit person, so what are you going to do for me? How are you going to help me? And the DNC, the Democrats, did not have an answer to that. What, again, Trump, interestingly enough, he actually did, okay, so what he did, he's a demagogue, okay? Now, he just painted other people as the problem, right? He didn't actually point at the massive systemic issues. He pointed at the results of those massive systemic issues and instead blamed it not on the institutions, not on the establishment as we know it, but more of, hey, it's on the problem is the illegals. We got to build a wall. We got to deport the refugee, or we got to ban the refugees. We got to deport illegal aliens. Those guys, the problem. Well, they're not actually the problem. And then, of course, he came up with false solutions. Undocumented immigrants are not stealing your jobs. They're not taking your taxpayer money. The giant corporations are. And Trump just endorsed a tax bill and will likely sign it into law that gives those giant corporations so much more money. He's working to deregulate the banks that have screwed you. All these financial institutions that gambled with your money, here's Donald Trump saying, you need less regulations and you need less oversight. We're going to get rid of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. We're going to put Mick Mulvaney in charge of it, who hates the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Are you guys winning yet? He's, again, a demagogue, right? And yet the Democrats couldn't even make an economic case for themselves in this election. It's incredibly sad. And a lot of it has to do with the consultants. Again, these paid consultants that have taken over the Democratic Party, they don't live in the America that you and I do, that other people do, okay? Their wages aren't stagnant. They're not being crushed by neoliberal economic policies. They're the ones that are benefiting from the status quo. These are the people that see nothing wrong with the status quo because all their rich friends in the cocktail circuit are doing just fine. In fact, under President Obama, they did absolutely fantastic. They don't understand what America is actually going through, what regular working people are going through. They're not worried about how they're going to pay the bills. So they look at Bernie Sanders and like, what is he doing? He's a socialist. But America doesn't want socialism. They don't want health care. I mean, they don't want Medicare for all. No, they're fine with the private markets. No, they don't want bank reform and more regulations. My friends in the banking industry tell me that regulations are just too tight. They don't understand. And these are the people that are running the current Democratic Party. No, we got to get them out. We got to get them out. Look, you know the reason that Sanders supporters were essentially purged from the DNC is because they were challenging the consultants. They didn't want these, Bernie Sanders supporters seeing where the money was actually going in the DNC. Because when you look at it, all this money goes to these paid consultants. Because that's who the DNC unfortunately works for. So, look, the Democratic Party, they've got to get back to representing the people, okay? And addressing their concerns and getting rid of these overpaid consultants in the DNC is the way to do it.